Welcome. Let's go ahead and explore further what we can do more with this particular situation that when the client is trying to call to the controller, what are the different ways it can call and what are the different possibilities. So let me create another board where we can zoom it a little bit only to this layer. So now we will just focus on our controller layer. So this is our controller and after this there will be other layers. We will not worry about them. For now, just let's say this is our controller, CTRL. This is our controller layer. And here we got a client. And this client can be anything. A mobile app, a postman, or a web browser, a React application, an Angular application, or anything. So we will just call this as a client. So let's say client. This is client. Now we saw that the client and this controller can have method number one, number two, number three. So we saw this controller was just a Java class where we did some mapping. So we said, let's say like this some mapping, and then we gave some mapping to our method as well. This method we will also give, and this method. So we were able to form a URL with the help of the class level mapping to the method level mapping and reach here. But what if the client wants to send some information? Let's say from here to here. He wants to send some information. So let's see how we can do that. For that, let me create a practice controller. So let's say we will create a controller for doing calculator operation. So I will say calculator controller, and we can also have a calculator DTO. So let me put it this way. So I will say calculator DTO. So let me stop the server and close everything except this. So I will close all. Just open our calculator controller. As we know, this calculator controller is just a normal Java class and it has some functions. Let's say we'll say public and it returns some kind of information. So we can say public double and then we'll say add function. Let's say similarly we can say, and it takes two parameters. So let's use integer num1 comma integer num2. Those are the parameters, and what it will do nothing but just return the addition of these two numbers. So num1 plus num2. But this is a different data type, so let's convert this to double because we can have a floating point number also, like decimal value number as well. So now I could do REST controller, that is mandatory, but having request mapping is not mandatory. I could directly go and say get mapping and then I could say slash add. I could do this. So let's try to start our server and see if we just try to hit this, what happens. So I will click here, start the server, and now I will open Postman. Of course, I could make calls from browser because it is a get request. So from browser we can make get request, but I will use Postman and we will use HTTP protocol because that's what the REST API follows. HTTP colon double slash localhost colon port 8080. That's the port. From where will I get the port? If I open this in the console, it is printing me that the port is 8080 on the local host. That's where our server or Tomcat server is running. So now if we go to our picture, we have our controller created. It has an add method which is URL of /add, and now we will try to make a call from our client, which is now, it was browser but now it's Postman, and we will make an HTTP GET call. So what is this? We have HTTP methods: get, post, put, delete, patch, copy, hard, but we will just focus on get, which means we will just ask the server to give us some information. So what is the URL? So up to here I can reach to the server, but the server can have many endpoints. So I would like to call add. So let me see. So I will say add add. That's the mapping, add add. Let me try to hit. So what happens? I get an error. It says internal server error. And let's check what is the error here. So it gives us some sort of error. What it says, null pointer exception. What does it mean? So if we see here, it says null pointer exception. In this calculator controller line number 11, there is an error. So if we scroll to the right, there should be more print stack trace of it. So here it's not detailed, but it is clear enough that there is a null pointer at a particular place. That is at line number 11. So click on this, it will take you to that line number. So this is the line number. So here, this value by default, if you know the value of this kind of capital double, capital D, this is called wrapper class. It is we could have written small double, which is primitive data type, but we want to use capital double with the wrapper classes, and by default the wrapper classes value is null. So it was trying to add null plus null, and that's why we got null pointer exception. So if you want to see what happened, let me run this in the debug mode. I will put a debugger here and run it with the debug mode. So this is how you also debug. So you will see what will happen now. Now our server is going to start in a debug mode, which means we can see the values of our variable whenever we want. So let's the server start. I will take this here, and this is how you put debug point. Just click once with your mouse, left click, and if you click it goes away. Click, stays, goes away. So try to keep this within the executable line. So here within this, this is an executable line, so I will keep it here. So now it says the server has started. So let's go ahead and hit it again. So now when we hit, it stops, the program stops here, the debugger stops here. So now if I hover on this, it says num1 value is null, num2 value is null. Let me try to right click, and also I can say right click and make sure to right click on this, and then right click and you can say evaluate. Evaluate, and it says null. What it means null? Because we are not passing anything, the value is getting null. And of course, after this, it will give us a null pointer exception. Great. So let this click here to resume the program. So it will further continue. So how we can solve this problem? But before that, let's make it more better by adding class level mapping as well, because we should focus on best practices also. So for best practice, we should add like this class level mapping as well. So we will say slash API slash v1 slash calculator, and then in that there is a function called add. So now our endpoint will also change. So we will have to copy this, and we have to, before the add, we have to paste this slash. Now it will do the exact same thing, but we have a problem now. So let me show you that. If I run this and try to hit, Nothing will change. It will come here. So this is class level mapping of URL to a controller class. And this is method level mapping of a URL to a controller function, right? To a controller function. So if we say what is its value, so this is its value. So if I come and hit this, we will get the exact same thing. It stops here, but we know that we will get null pointer. Okay, so how to fix this one? So somehow this function is expecting two numbers. So if I could create, let's say, another main method class here. Let's say I will say calculator main and just create a main method class. I will say public static void main, and I will say string array args, and now I can now just say I will stop this server. I will say calculator controller cc is equal to new calculator controller, and now I can say double result is equal to cc dot, I will just call the method add method of the calculator controller class. So in the calculator controller class we have this add method. So I'm now calling that. Let's say I will pass the value as 4.5 comma 8.5, and now I can print it system dot out dot println, and I can print result. If I run this program like a standalone Java program, I will get my result here. You will see I will get the output, and the output is 13.0. But what I had to do, I had to first create an instance of controller and then call its method, pass the value. If I pass the value, let's say 14.5, and then run it again, then again I will get a different value. But somebody has to do this, right? Because here this is the add method. Somebody has to call it and pass the values. So who is calling it? Already when we are annotating these things with REST controller and mapping, it gives this method a power to be called from the URL instead of running as the main method program. But we are not passing any value. That's the problem. So let's pass the value. So there are different ways to pass the value. Let's see the first way. So the first way is we can say before this at the rate request mapping, and here we can give a key. So let's say I will say num1, and similarly we can have another mapping as well, and then we can say num2. So these are annotations provided by Spring. So here I can, this is one request, sorry, it should be request param, not mapping, because what we want to do is pass the parameter to this function as a HTTP request. Similarly, I can say I want another one. So there can be many parameters. So I can say request param. And now in the bracket I can say num2. Okay, so now we have kept this variable and this variable same, but it can be different also. Let's say I can say num111, and this can be num222. Doesn't matter. We can keep this value and this variable name different. but this should be same as what we will pass. So let's go ahead and see how we can pass. So now what we can do in the URL, we can say question mark num111 is equal to 6.7, and we also have to pass another one. So we have to say ampersand num222 is equal to 1.3. Remember? So now our URL is going to look like this. So let's copy this and try to paste it here. So now what will happen when we will try to access the application? This num111 will match with this num111, and because of this annotation provided by Spring Boot request param, this value of num11 which is 6.7 is going to get assigned to this variable, because num111 is the key which is getting mapped, its value is getting assigned here. Similarly, num222, because after and there is num222, here this value is going to get mapped with this key, and its value 1.3 going to get assigned here. So let's put a debugger and try to run. So this is exactly the same thing that we were trying to do by calling our controller with the main method. So let me resume this and we will try to hit it again. So here we called our controller with some values and we got the result. So same way, when you want to pass value in a REST API get endpoint, this is how we have to do. Request param and request param. If there are more fields, keep on giving comma and keep on giving the request param field. So if we run this now, let me, so if you already see this value, it's already coming. Let me resume this. Oh wait, because we were running this one, calculator. No, make sure to have selected this one, not this one even. In fact, we have to, yeah, that is correct. So we have to run our application. If we run this one, it's going to run this main method. That's not right. We have to run this, which is our main application. So run this one, right click, run main. So now here in the drop down, we got that as well. So now it's running that application. So let it run and then we will see what is happening. So now the magic will be, we will be able to pass the value. So you can right click and clear the console. So if I now click here, you will see send. We got the response as 8 addition of this. But then because we did not run in debug mode, it did not stop. So now I'm running the debug mode to show you how the value from the URL will be captured and set to our Java variable like this. We'll see. So now it has started. Let me clear the console. Let me change the value to, let's say, 1.7 and hit. So now our debug point, see, it stopped, it's waiting. And if you see, now the value num1 value is, just hover on it. Hover, keep your mouse there. It will stop, it will show you. Then if you see, the value is 6.7, and from where is it coming? From the URL here. So if I go here, see num111 6.7. Great. And what is the value of num2? Let's hover. See 1.7. From where is it coming? Again from here 1.7. So now if I resume this, the value we will see. So we'll see 8.4 as the response. That is great. So now we know how to do this. But the best practice is try to keep this as same. So I will change this to, we should try to keep Again, it's a best practice. If you don't do, then it's fine. If you do it, then it's considered as good practice. So copy this, try to keep this name same as this name, and this name same as this name, and in your URL also modify to same. So 1 1, this should be 2 to 1. So now num1 key will map to num1 and its value will be mapped to num1. Num2 key will map here and value will be here. So let's try to see, debug, and maybe change its value to test it again. So I will say 1.8 and 6.9. So now the server has started. Let's hit. Oh wait, yeah. So now the value we got here 6.9 and 1.8. Click here to resume the program and we see the value as this. So this is one way to pass data from our client, which is our Postman here, to our server, which is our Spring Boot. And that way is called request parameters or request param, which is nothing but after the URL add one question mark and add the key value pair like this. And then for others parameters, you have to just give ampersand. If there is another one, you say ampersand num3 is equal to 666. So you can give like this also. That's also fine. So you can, this should be 1 ampersand. So again 1 ampersand. Similarly, you can say ampersand num4 is equal to something 878. So you can keep on passing that. So if we go out to our picture now, we will see that we managed to pass the client information to the server through the URL with the help of request parameter, and on the server we were able to get the information via the help of Spring Boot's annotation called @request param. So are there any other ways to do this? Yes, let's explore it in the next video. Thank you for watching this video. I will see you in the next one.